Hey, what's going on, guys? We are going live here from the Hooked Up Wisconsin headquarters, northern Wisconsin. Going live on Instagram and YouTube tonight. So, we're going to do some ice fishing reports, some ice conditions reports, talk pan fishing, crappies, bluegills, perch. It's kind of what the plan is tonight. And I think Dax is going to be joining me. Dax Zeta. He's a great panfish angler. And we're going to be talking about primarily panfish. So once we do our fishing report, there's Dax. You guys on YouTube, you'll be able to hear Dax, but you won't be able to see him. But you should be able to hear him all right. All right, Dax is coming on. How's everybody doing tonight? How's the fishing been? Anybody been out? I know the ice conditions are super variable. Hey, there he is. How you doing, Zach? Dax?
Good. How you guys doing?
Good. Haven't talked to you for a while. Been a few.
No, we've been trading stories about slopping through the slop and slush and not very good ice.
It's been a rough couple of weeks, that's for sure. And it hasn't gotten any better, really. That's the sad part.
No, we haven't. Just actually retying some rods here.
Okay.
We had. I know up by you because my in-laws live north of you in Minong. Whatever ice is underneath the foot plus of snow is not good.
No, it's not. It's really sketchy because you can drill a hole in one place and have 16 inches of solid ice, and then you go 20 yards another direction, this much and water, and then this much and then water, and then a little bit more. But it's it's just been really, really variable. That's the bad part.
Yeah, you can't check it all safely and be efficient at the same time,
No, it's basically I've still been on foot. I haven't even taken a machine out. So
the safest way, I mean, you're hearing the same stories I am of people going down.
Oh yeah. Yeah, even four-wheelers and stuff are sketchy still right now, which is crazy for this time of year around here. I mean, it's unheard of.
But, yeah, I mean, you can attest to this. My biggest concern is the city derby's coming up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all these little tournaments they're going to have. Yeah.
So, like Chautauqua's big derby, I took the four-wheeler out on Tuesday and, safely we checked ice, and there's a lot of snowmobile traffic on the Chautauqua chain.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 6 to 7 inches of garbage, and then there's 6 to 7 inches of ice, but it wasn't like how you drill a nice hole and you get the rings as you're going down.
No,
it wasn't solid black ice. I mean, there was ice, but it's ice from December 7th.
Yeah, it's weird. You get like that ice that's almost honeycombed, sandwiched in between the good ice, and it's really weird. John on YouTube said he's been out of Washburn. It's been really slow, which it has been slow up there from what I've heard. The ice is better up by Washburn on the bay, but it's tough. And then Dave says been out a few times. The ice by me in Madison area is hit and miss, and that's the other thing. The whole southern range of the ice belt is basically iceless. So much further south of southern Wisconsin, even in further east, it's even worse. Like they're basically not even fishing in Michigan yet. There's open water everywhere, and like over in eastern Ontario, there's no ice. So that's pretty insane.
Yeah, my buddy Chad and his family friends were out on Middle Eau Claire the day before New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
And they had open water in the middle.
Wow.
And that's not even, it's not a super deep lake by any means.
No.
30 feet maybe?
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, you just have to really be careful. I mean, because that's only been a couple weeks and it hasn't been cold. There's probably only a couple of inches of ice wherever that is now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that Barnsley area is kind of chillier than surrounding areas, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's walk or snowshoe or snowmobile. Like when I went to Mille Lacs on December 28th, a couple days after Christmas, and there was 10, 12, 14 all the way out, and there wasn't a stitch of snow on the entire lake other than some hard packed stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you come over here and it's just a sloppy mess.
Yeah, I just talked to Jake Wallace from Angling Buzz, and he said the lakes over by Brainerd are absolutely perfect. Like 20 inches of ice, just a few drifts of snow, very little snow on the ice. He said you can drive all over the place over there. It's like, huh, that sounds nice. Not here. Not here, man. Not even close.
You can get there from your house in 2 hours. Let's roll.
Yeah, that's tempting. I mean, I think I might actually go film with those guys this winter. It sounds like so. I might go over that way and film some stuff. But
yeah, might as well.
Over in Oneida County, we have a report. We're doing pretty good on ice, around a foot of good ice. But with the warmer weather, the fish are hit and miss. So good ice, so okay fishing. Sounds like the one good thing that I found is if you can get to fish, they are hammering this year. Everywhere I've been has been hot as far as the bite, which is probably because there's not much pressure. There's just nobody fishing them.
No.
So they're gonna bite if you can get to them. It's just a matter of how much work you want to put in. I mean, it has not been hard to catch them once you find them, in my experience this year.
No, I was up by you New Year's Eve with my buddy and his son and family members, and we caught a pile of fish, nice fish on tip ups, and I did the basin crappie thing in the morning, and I was done by, I think I fished for 4 hours, and I was on that lake all by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a Thursday. I mean, granted, it was during the week, and then Tuesday I was out with my buddy Chad on Chain, one of the best crappie or best panfish lakes in our region.
Yep.
He saw 3 people.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. I mean, like last weekend I went out with Blake Tollefson, and we were on a lake that gets fished pretty regularly in the wintertime. It's a smaller lake, like around 100 acres. We were out there on a weekend. We fished from about 7 in the morning to about 3 in the afternoon. We were the only tracks on the entire lake. No one came out on a weekend. Not one person. Not even anyone on a snowmobile. Like we didn't even hear a door slam on any of the houses on the edge of the lake. Like it was so quiet out there. It was crazy. It was like deserted. I mean,
yeah,
but it's gonna be great for the fishery. I mean, I think this is next year is gonna be, you're gonna notice that the fish didn't get pounded on in the winter on some of these lakes, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like where we live, I mean, we know a lot of people, and I would say 60% of them solely use their vehicle to go fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more. I would say maybe that's a higher number. I mean, you and I both are lucky enough to have a wheeler or a snowmobile or something like that, but the majority of the folks in Northwest Wisconsin don't have either. They just use their vehicle.
Yeah, they drive their truck out. That's by January 1st. Usually you can drive your truck somewhere, on the shallower lakes like Clam or Shell or those bigger flat lakes. They're usually drivable, but man, not this year.
No, gosh, no.
Not even now, like nowhere.
Just think of the Ice Castle people. There's no chance. Not where we live.
Probably not this year.
No, heck no. I mean, Hayward Lake, nope, not even. I wouldn't even remotely think about going on any Hayward Lake right now.
No.
Not the big ones, not the ones we talk about.
Right. Ice in southern Wisconsin, Madison to Milwaukee is junk. Fish with extreme caution. Yeah, that's what I've heard. It's getting worse. That's the crazy thing.
We got rain here on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be 38 Sunday, 40 Monday, solid rain. I don't know how long for.
Mm-hmm.
And then Wednesday, precipitation again. I mean, the extended forecast, you're a weather nerd probably like I am, and we're looking at, anywhere from 25 to 35, and the lows are in the high teens.
Yeah, if anyone here is a weather nerd, you're watching the jet stream and it's La Nina right now. It's basically the jet stream just shooting straight across. It's not dipping up into the Arctic at all. And so we're not getting any cold air getting pulled down for a while.
Not in the foreseeable forecast, no.
No. It's going to be a very limited ice year, which really sucks for Lake Superior because you need cold up there, and we're just not getting it. So it may be a very limited ice season on Lake Superior too, as far as where you can fish. Which
even the harbor didn't last very long. They had one windy day and it blew out all that ice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those years that guys start trolling for cohos on the North Shore in February. Like you could still launch a boat in up the North Shore right now.
Oh yeah, easily. Yeah,
it's crazy.
And if it does freeze, it's not going to freeze nearly enough anyway.
No. The river bite for big browns is on fire in Milwaukee and Racine. Yeah, I've been seeing some videos roll in. The guys are actually fishing in the rivers, and they're catching some big old browns up in the rivers because there's no ice on them.
What is that one? Lou Henry 3. What is
Walleye and so Lou Henry keeps trying to get on my stream here. So Louis, you got to settle down a little bit, bud, with the requests, because I'm not going to let you on the stream with us. We're trying to keep it to Wisconsin anglers here, but you can ask questions. That's no problem. But there's a lot of questions. So walleye is the kind of fish that we fish for. An extension is you got to sometimes put an extension on your auger to get through the ice. He's from, I think, Taiwan or something. So he hasn't done a lot of ice fishing, I don't think.
Gotcha.
So yeah, as far as the ice conditions, worst I've ever seen, I would say, for this time of year. I can't remember a worse year, personally.
Yeah, we were talking about that last week. You were documenting 2013?
Mm-hmm.
Or really, gosh, 2013, where was I at?
In 2013, there was a lot of ice. I mean, there was tons of ice because it was cold, but there was also a lot of snow. This year we have a lot of snow and no cold. I mean, 2013 was fine because at least the slush would keep freezing, but this year it just doesn't.
Yeah, we had all that cold air over Christmas break, and none of it penetrated through the 16 inches of snow. I mean, it did nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Then it didn't. The ice that I walked on with my daughter on December 8th or 9th or 10th was 7 inches. It was pure black ice all the way across Lake Chetek, right by where I live.
Yep.
On the bottom part of the chain. And there's people with four-wheelers on the top of Prairie Lake, which is pretty much by Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be willing to guess that's the same identical ice that got covered by all that snow.
Yeah, it probably hasn't gained any at all. Yep.
No.
Jeremy B on YouTube says, I swear Mother Nature hates ice fishermen, especially in southern Wisconsin. Last 8 of 10 years have been very limited ice seasons. Yeah. I mean, it's such a weather dependent sport, like, especially if you don't have access to like a good sled and you're just basically stuck on foot or with a vehicle. And right now there's no vehicle traffic. So if you don't have a machine, you're walking only. And that's what I've been doing. And I've been fishing a lot of smaller lakes, like smaller, even lakes with no public boat launches, and walking out on them because they've got smaller basins. It's easier to find the fish. You don't have to move as much. Like you can pretty much cover the basin on foot and not wear yourself out, looking for panfish or whatever. So I've been sticking to small water. Like, I don't think I've fished anything over, I bet you I haven't fished anything over 150 acres in the last 3 weeks. And,
Yeah, where you got 200 of them northwest of you.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of options, which is nice. But
yeah,
I haven't gone walleye fishing since I went up on the St. Louis, just because I haven't been able to get to any of my good walleye spots, really. I just haven't had the access. Because I don't have a snowmobile. I've got access to a four-wheeler, but man, it's just not four-wheeler conditions, really.
No.
I mean, even it's safe on some lakes, but it's just hard to get around because of the slush pockets. You get stuck and then you're digging out for 25, 30 minutes, and it's just it's not a good situation.
No, I'm like I said, I'm lucky where I live. There's a lot of snowmobile traffic, so they knock down. No, but I haven't been on a lake where, I was up by my in-laws live just west of Minong, and I checked 3 lakes up there, and I wanted to get to all 3 of them because there wasn't a footprint on any of them, but there's no way I could have gotten off the main road.
Right.
The bowl landings were just plowed by, so if I had my four-wheeler, I would have made it 7 feet, and then I would have been done, so.
Yeah, and then you'd have been walking anyway, right?
Pretty much,
Plus had the four-wheeler to dig out when you got done.
Yeah.
So next week I'm going down to the Mississippi to do an airboat trip for perch with McCormick's down there. So I'm hoping that'll be a lot better. That'll be good timing, I think, because then after that it is supposed to cool down a little bit, and I think we're going to get some freezing up. As long as we don't get more snow between now and 2 weeks from now, it'll help a lot. But hopefully the rain actually does. I hope it does rain a bit on Monday and kind of knock down the snow. That would be nice, so that when it does get cold, it can actually freeze.
Yeah, I would hope that it would rain the entire day, honestly.
Yeah. Justin said he was out on the lake near La Crosse, had 6 inches of solid ice. The bite was slow, but the fish that were moving were nice. That's good. Luke hasn't been out fishing, too busy these days. And Jeremy B says, keep up the great work on your fishing videos. We're living through you. Yeah, thanks, man. I try. I do my best. Even in a year like this, I'm going fishing. Like, there's no question about that. I am going fishing. It's just going to be a different story, than it would be if I could get around. But I will fish. There's no question about that.
I'll walk to. Yeah, Luke, Lost My Lure had a good point. How do you think, we just kind of mentioned that, how do you think this will affect the fish population in the spring? I would say it'll be the best you've ever seen pre-COVID.
Yeah, I agree. Like 1 year of no pressure on fish during the winter is going to make it, you won't even believe what a difference it'll make on a lake. I bet. I mean, the lakes, there may be some lakes that freeze out. That's the only problem with it. If we don't get some melting going on, you could have some freeze out lakes, but the lakes that don't freeze out are going to be absolutely on fire in the spring, I think. Yep.
Yeah. You kind of hit on that. Like the freeze out lakes, if you ever have, if you find a lake with any weeds that are still relatively alive, because the snow cover kills the oxygen and the weeds, that.
Yep.
You're more of a biologist than I am, but if you can find a lake, drop a camera down. If you find a lake with any stitch of remotely real live weeds still, I mean, that lake the fish will be biting for sure, but if you can get back there in the spring, it'll be phenomenal.
It should be. Yep. I agree. And I think too, like a lot of the lakes around here, they sustain a way higher harvest of fish in the wintertime than they do in the summer. Like way higher.
No doubt. Oh yeah, 100%. I would agree with that 100%.
So I think it's going to make a huge difference in some of those lakes to not have that ice fishing harvest. It seems like ice fishermen are just more likely to keep fish in general. It's just kind of a cultural thing almost to just pile up a bunch of fish on the ice. I don't know what it is about it, but people just love to sit on a school of panfish and just keep filling buckets, man. They just do.
Well, you're right. My buddy Chad and I went out Tuesday, got out there like 11, catching one here, catching one there. 2 old timers came out on this. It was like a little Toyota truck with some tracks on it.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty cool, very engineering worthy, and we were pretty impressed. And the first thing the guy said when he hopped out of the truck, how many of you guys need before you get your limit? We're hoping to get the limit too,
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I don't know, man. We got, a couple hundred more to go or whatever I said, I'm like, I'm not going to be 65. You and I ain't going to be sitting on a bucket catching 50 panfish a day and going home and cleaning them. That's just not.
Nope.
That's not something I will be doing. I enjoy keeping some fish for my wife and daughter. And 10 is usually my maximum unless, we catch a few extra fish when we went last spring on the big lake. But 10 panfish, I mean, you have 2 children, I have the one, but 10, 15 panfish is quite a few after a long day of fishing.
Yep.
And then you and I throw on a pike there to pickle, but I mean, that's an extra hour and a half, 2 hours out of your day, easy,
Yeah, I have a really good system, and I actually have been documenting it on my YouTube channel, like how I go about my fish keeping, catching, processing, and basically when I go fishing for panfish, I plan to keep 10 or 15, like 10, usually 10 or 12, depending on the size. It's usually right around 10 or 12. And then I keep them from freezing. I just made a video about how I keep them from freezing. I always keep them in a live well of some sort or in a bucket with water. I hate bringing home frozen ones. And then when I get them home, I bleed them out, put them in the sink with some snow and water, and then I can keep them in there for 2 days if I want before I clean them. I don't have to clean them right away. So I clean them when I have time. They're all bled out. They've never been frozen. Then I put them in the fridge. I have 5 days to eat them before they start to turn a little bit or start to smell a little bit. They're still not, you could still eat them, but 5 days is my limit. So somewhere in those 5 days, we're going to eat them for dinner like we just did tonight. I just had fresh fish sandwiches tonight. And then I never freeze them. I start the process over the next weekend. Whatever I catch that weekend, that's our meal for the week. And I just basically do that every single week. And we have 52 meals of fish a year, pretty much. But I never have extra. We always eat every bit of that fresh and 1 meal a week. And that's kind of my limit. So that's basically my system. But
yeah.
And it's a great healthy meal that you get every week. And you're not, I try not to keep those fish on the same lake more than once or twice a year. So I'm always rotating my lakes. So I'm not putting a lot of pressure on one lake. And that's just how I do it. And I feel like that's a pretty responsible system that really works for me. And it's not, I can still have a meal of fish a week and be totally guilt-free about it, doing it that way.
Yeah, I'm the same way. If I harvest, I kept 10 out of Chetek Tuesday night or Tuesday, and I might not keep any fish out of the Chetek chain the rest of the year. I mean, we got 300-400 other lakes close to you or close to my in-laws or smaller lakes close to Hayward. I rarely ever double dip on a lake, you know, so big or small. I mean, that's just how kind of you and I approach it, you know, and we selectively harvest 10, 11 inch crappies normally.
Yep.
Anything in that 12 range, you know, we're going to let those go, 8s and 9s. You know, hopefully they're not super deep, and then we'll let those fish go. And then, you know, we both have measuring tools where
Mm-hmm.
nice bluegills, 8.5, maybe 9 here and there, but we try not to creep past that number. I mean, as long as, I mean, we both do it the correct way, regardless of how many we actually keep. But I think that's something that, as more fishermen get involved, you know, since COVID, and the harvest rates have been blown way out of proportion, whether it's via the computer or just access to more fishing tools. We got to keep a pretty firm eye on that. I mean, our area is still 25 fish a guy, so I mean that's a lot of fish that may or may not have been caught without, you know, some of the stuff that we can have in our possession today. So we got to be careful. Sure.
Yep. And I like to rotate my lakes too. I mean, I like variety, so I don't like fishing the same lake twice in a row anyways, but there's a lot of little lakes around this area that just don't get a lot of pressure and they don't have a ton of harvest on them too. Like those less popular lakes. And they still have a ton of nice 7.5, 8-inch bluegills and 10-inch crappies in them that you can go catch for a meal. And you know, they're never going to be trophy fisheries either. So, you know, it's just one of those things with it. Sometimes I just go get a meal of fish. I'm not looking for big fish. I'm just looking for a meal. And then I'll usually go to one of those lakes that is, you know, more of a less targeted lake, I guess you would say.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. No, and some of the lakes that we want to go to today that have trophy caliber fish in them, I can't see either one of us making it there for at least this month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Especially a lot of the spots I want to fish, like they're a good half mile to 3/4 of a mile ride from any landing or any access point. You know, so I'm not walking that far through 8 inches of snow and slush pulling a sled behind me. I'm just not going that far.
No.
So yeah,
I
I agree.
It's tempting, but
yep.
No, a lot.
Yep, it's tempting.
Oh yeah, I want to do it. I mean, you know, we have all these lakes running through our head while we're at work or when we're sitting on the bucket or we're talking to our buddies and we're like, I just can't do it. I mean, I physically, I think I'm in pretty decent shape. And I walked out on that lake last Thursday, and I had a shack, I had one little chair, a flash in my auger, and like 2 rods. That was it.
Yep.
You know, I'm not a smoker. I'm not, you know, I don't do any of that. And I walked through all that garbage for 3.5, 4 hours. When I got home, I unloaded everything, and I think I hit the couch. I may or may not have had the controller in my hand, and I fell asleep. And it was like 12:30 in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kicks your butt. I mean, especially that slush when it freezes just a little bit, and every step you're on top of it for half your step, and then you go through and you have to catch yourself again. On every step, it's just like pa-pum, 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 and it just wears you out, man.
Oh yeah. You know, your bibs are an extra 20 pounds when you're done, and you're like, oh my
God. Yep. And then if it's cold, all the slush freezes to your sled, and then your sled doesn't slide anymore. It drags. It's like dragging a buck out of the woods at that point.
Yep. No, you're 100. Yeah, that was the day. Last Thursday, we had that little bit of snow on the morning. It was almost like post front.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked out, and I walked on another snowmobile trail, actually, so it was really smooth. But then when I left, that 1.5 inches of snow was on that trail, and I was pushed. I think I pushed most of it back to the boat landing.
Yeah. There's just no amount of loading your sled correctly that's gonna fix that problem. The only thing you can do is have a Smitty sled, and I know I need to build one, and I still haven't because I know it would make a difference in the conditions we have right now. Like, no question. I just have never gotten around to it because I really haven't needed one. But this year would be the year to have one if there ever was one.
I have skis on mine.
Yeah. On your shack?
Yeah, I got just 2 skis from garage sale. Then I take them off and I get them waxed or whatever. But
that doesn't help.
Nicer.
Doesn't help much when there's 8 inches of snow.
Yeah. So I mean, they're only 2 inches off the sled. I mean, it's not a super deep, they're not super high off. I mean, I could probably make it higher, but they would just sink down. I mean, granted, my shack's only 45 or 50 pounds or whatever, but it's just, I mean, there's a million ways to do it, but it's just hard. I mean, the sled was one thing, and then walking through it all is just a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, even without a sled, it's hard walking, like through that slush and snow and stuff. It's a lot of work, but I'm still going. Like I said, I'm just picking spots where I know I can catch fish within a short range of the landing on smaller lakes has kind of been my strategy. And like I said, nobody's been fishing them. Like they've been basically untouched. So the fishing's been great. I got no complaints about the fishing itself. It's been awesome.
Oh, me neither. Yeah, I did. I've done. Yeah, I mean, I'll just fish a tech the rest of the winter. As long as I keep checking ice and making sure everything's safe. I mean, I like fishing up by you and north of you and east of you and west of you, and I don't know if I could physically do it all winter long. With the mindset. I mean, I'll fish like everybody else, but do I want to travel an hour and a half and then walk a half a mile? And then walk back and then drive home an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I mean,
how's Mille Lacs? Have you been on Mille Lacs? You've been on Mille Lacs, haven't you? Once or twice? How's the conditions out there?
Perfect.
Are they?
Yeah, I was with Tom. We had a 4-wheeler and a snowmobile, and we put about 20 miles on the one day. So we went out to the flats, and it was bumpy. I mean, it wasn't smooth, but the ice was perfect.
Yeah, nice.
No slush. A lot of glare ice. That was, which is good to see. Obviously, that's the safest ice we can get. And then up until even last weekend, I talked to a couple, Kristen Patiga and her husband. They were out on Red Door last weekend, so that's the north middle part of Mille Lacs. And they had a group of 15 or 20 people. And I don't think they were letting vehicle traffic out yet. And I was out there 3 days after Christmas, which is 16, 17 days away from that. And the ice hasn't grown since then.
Right.
And it, in a normal year in January, it should have grown exponentially, and it didn't do anything. I mean,
so far January hasn't made any ice, basically. It's just been a dud. Derek said, I'm with you. I have all the supplies to build a Smitty sled, just haven't done it yet. That's kind of where I'm at. And then A. Silva Outdoors said, what is your strategy for panfish? Do you drill a grid and hole hop? So I'll let Dax answer that first, and then I'll kind of fill in how I do it. But of course there's different kinds of panfish and pan fishing. But on a typical day, what does your strategy look like, Dax?
For like a structure-oriented lake, I guess, I would drill a grid pattern, normally a rectangle or a square, and I would start on, say, I would pick an inside corner, and then I'd have the point on the end, so then I would drill across the top of the point, and I would drill out of the break of the point, closer to the basin. Then I'd make my square back, so that would cover every depth where I think those fish would travel. So they may suspend over the deep water and then pull up to the shallow as the sun starts to set. And that's normally how Caleb and I would look at where we fish. That's how we would do it. There's a very good sunset bite where we live. But normally my patterns of holes are in a rectangle or a square, in what you would call a grid pattern. So I would try to cover multiple depth ranges, and I would hole hop. That's just kind of how I approach it. unless I'm walleye fishing, I don't rarely set up a tip up. So I do a lot of hole hopping. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me, yeah, if I'm fishing structure, I I do the same thing. First thing I'm gonna do is drill about 20 holes probably, and I do it a little bit different. I tend to drill my holes in a zigzag pattern. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll zigzag from shallow weeds to deep weeds, and then I'll turn around and I'll drill just off the weeds and out into the basin and work my way back, which probably ends up looking pretty similar to what you're doing anyways. But that's just kind of how I've always drilled out a grid. And then um, obviously I usually check my holes sort of every other hole as I go just to make sure I'm on track and my maps are matching up with my actual flasher readings.
Yep.
And then from there, you fish some holes, you learn pretty quick where the fish are at. And man, the one lake I've been fishing, the fish have just not related to the structure at all. They'll zip out over the basin and then they'll move back up over the weeds all day long. They're moving, and then it's really nice to have some sort of forward facing sonar because you don't know which way they went unless you drop some sort of pan optics or something down there, and then all you have to do is swing it around and you're like, oh, they went that way, and then you just move that way. Like it is a game changer when it comes to staying on the fish 100%. I mean, but I still am not fishing with it if I'm hole hopping. I'm fishing with my Vex when I'm hole hopping. But if I need to pinpoint the school again and I have my pan optics with me, I will use it to track the school. But the dang thing is so big and heavy, I haven't been bringing it out that much because I don't want to haul it out there in the slush. So I've just been doing it the old-fashioned way lately.
It's a big unit, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And it takes up room. And there's Ray, Tiffany, Zach Dooley. How you doing? Logan's out on Winnibigoshish right now, targeting walleye and not catching any. Any tips? Man, I've never fished Winnie for walleyes, but I'm trying to remember what I've learned just from other people. But I want to say, like mid-depth structure is kind of what I've heard out there. Like kind of that 15 to 25 foot rock and stuff tends to be best for walleyes, but that's just what I remember hearing.
I guess Logan would. I mean, I know Logan. I work with them, and I guess you got to. I know a couple of fishing guys up there, Logan, out of Grand Rapids area. So you got to. If you tell me what side of the lake you're on, then I can probably help a little bit better. But there's no like secret spoon on Winnibigoshish. There's no real secret bait. It just depends on what part of the structure the fish are relating to. So it might be a depth change or it might be a location change, but they're out of high banks. So I'm guessing I would probably do some hole hopping tomorrow and try to just use some different depth ranges and try to locate some fish. Hopefully one of your buddies or you have a underwater camera and do a little search and destroy type of scenario. Obviously, depending on the snow and, like I said, mobility. But High Banks is a super high-quality resort, and there's a lot of information just at the resort itself. So those types of folks will definitely help you and try to point you in the right direction if you're there all weekend, which I'm pretty sure you are. So Logan or Caleb and I don't have any real secret lures to catch walleyes on Winnibigoshish. All your buddies and you have the spoons and the buckshots and the glow reds with the minnow heads and all that. But I'm kind of surprised you haven't caught any perch or anything yet either. So I think a location change might be something you want to talk about with your buddies tonight or tomorrow, I think.
Yep. There's a lot of good structure on that lake, and you just have to find what one the fish are on is what I would say, And there's a lot of options on Winnie, a lot. And
yes, there are.
The perch oftentimes are going to be out on your deeper flats on Winnie. They're going to be on like those 30-foot flats. if you want to just target perch. And there might be walleyes mixed in with them too.
Yep. No, you're 100% right. Yep.
It's a cool lake.
But it is. And that lake, there's a phenomenal shallow water bite as sunrise and sunset too, kind of like Mille Lacs. So don't be afraid to fish deep during the day and then move up shallower at night with a set line and a jigging rod, and just try to like pick spots on, maybe you have a Navionics app on your phone or whatever, and just kind of try to locate some really nice looking structure that there's not a lot of people on, and just kind of go from there. But I would probably move around a little bit tomorrow until you start locating some of the fish you want to catch or take home for a nice meal.
Ray Tiffany said he's coming up this way. He's coming up the Hayward area tomorrow. Yeah, have fun. It's going to be rough going out there, but like I said, if you can get on fish, they should bite.
I guess Caleb and I will both tell you, be super careful, especially in Hayward.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Those lakes, the lakes that Caleb and I fished did not have good ice before it snowed. So side by side went down on Big Shatak Saturday or Sunday, and that lake's only 15 minutes from Hayward. Stone Lake, the city, that had ice the day after Christmas. So I don't know. I can't give you an honest report on the ice because I haven't personally been there, but proceed with caution. That's all I can say. Yeah,
for sure. It is not a normal year. That is one thing I will say. Do not expect the conditions to be like they normally would be this time of year. Serona area. Same thing in Serona. It's really no different. It's not any different there. It's rough. Rough ice conditions.
Yeah, whether he's thinking of Long Lake or all the lakes out in the forest in between there and Birchwood.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much snow up there. It's in that little Chippewa forest right in between there and Birchwood there. I mean, you're looking at 2+ feet of snow. So, I don't know. A lot of those lakes in the forest are deep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I don't know. I personally don't know anyone that's had a machine on Long Lake.
Yeah, I do. I do know somebody who I know 2 guys who have, and only on the lower part of the lake, not on the narrows or the upper part. And they said it was not easy getting around, but there was pretty safe ice where they were at as far as safety goes, but lots of slush pockets. Like the one guy with a 4-wheeler spent 90% of his day digging out and trying to get off the lake after he got out there. So, yeah, if you got a snowmobile, you might have better luck, but I would not stop until you get to where you're going, and have fun. That's all I can say. Be safe and be ready for some trouble, but it's at least you're going fishing. You know, that's the main thing. Get out there, but as long as you're being safe, go catch some fish. Torrin Larson said, any crappie advice for the Milwaukee area? Any good lake strategies, patterns, etc.? Not specifically to the that area, because there's no reason for us to go down to Madison when we have all these lakes up here. I know there's good lakes down there, but I don't know which ones they would be. As far as crappie fishing itself, like, you got 2 fish. You've got basin fish, you got structure fish. A lot of lakes have both. Some lakes basically only have structure fish. Very few lakes only have basin fish, I would say. There's a few that pretty much only have basin fish, but in most basin lakes you can find some panfish still in the weeds. But you just have to find which type of fish you're dealing with and which ones you want to target. But some lakes that are super shallow don't have a basin, so you're fishing weed fish, and then you just have to look for the greenest, nicest weeds that you can find. And crappies really like scattered weeds. Scattered green weeds is what you want to find for crappies, in my opinion. Not super thick weeds, not brown stinky weeds, but like scattered green. weeds is what you look for.
Yep. Yeah, that Madison. I mean, without you ever being there, that's how the Madison chain sets up pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
You got beautiful structure on, I'll probably forget one of them, but I know there's Kaganza, Mendota, Monona. I think there's 4. I always forget the last one, but all of them have rock piles. All of them have good weeds. There's a fleet of milfoil cutters out there in the summer. I've been lucky enough to fish down there quite a few times, but I know a lot of people fish in the channels around the Madison belt. They call the highway that runs on the south side of Madison the belt, I think they call it. It's like an 8 or 10 lane highway that runs on the south side of Madison and goes down toward Illinois. But a lot of people fish in that area. There's a lake in between Mendota and Monona, I believe. I can't remember the name of the lake, but a lot of people panfish in that area and they walk out because it's shallower and safer. Not a lot of current underneath that bridge, and if he's from the area, he'll kind of know what I'm talking about. But a lot of people that I personally know that fish down there don't fish Mendota that often because it's the biggest one, it's the deepest one, so they always stay in the shallower areas. But
I mean, I'm guessing right now from the reports I'm getting, none of it's safe probably right now.
No, just there's a couple like little backwater, more isolated areas on the Madison chain that, from what I've heard, I have my buddy Grant's down there, and he lives in south of Madison or whatever, and he's been able to walk out safely, but no machine traffic whatsoever in the Madison chain. You know, there's a couple lakes to the east, you know, like Okachi and Oconomowoc and Pewaukee and Delavan and Geneva, and my buddy Guanago, which is right by there, and he hasn't ice fished yet this year, so you just got to be careful. Wabisa's the one I forgot. Sorry. Monona, Wabisa, and Mendota.
The only one I've been on is Mendota, and it was years ago in open water. It wasn't ice fishing, but
yeah, they're all super cool lakes. I mean, they really are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty amazing fishery for being in an urban area like that.
Yes.
Martin's fishing. Any other trips planned besides the river? Well, I might be going to Brainerd area to fish with the Angling Buzz crew at some point. That's one trip. The Mississippi, and then nothing really solid planned other than that, other than I'm definitely hoping to get back up to the bay again a couple times on Lake Superior. So that's pretty much the extent of it for this season for me. How about you, Dax? You got any plans?
Yeah, I actually just got invited for an airboat trip Wednesday as well.
Okay.
Yeah, my buddy Josh out of Blaine, Minnesota, him and his dad and his brother-in-law are going, so I might tag along with them Wednesday. And then I think the last weekend, excuse me, the last weekend in January, I'm going to Eagle River for 4 days.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we might sneak up to Gogebic for a day or two with my buddy Justin.
Yep.
Everybody knows Justin. He's the fishing guide up there. So
sounds like he just started running trips here this last week.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and next is bread and butter. You know, those big perch and set. Well, you know those rod setups better than I do. Obviously, the jaw jackers, the automatic setup deals, and but all of his machines are track machines. Eagle River and north, and even like northeast Vilas, or maybe even Vilas, probably Vilas, Iron, and Oneida. 4-wheeler traffic is pretty much nil, and you need a track machine of some sort, just because the lower part of the UP or the northwest part of the UP and the upper and northeast corner of Wisconsin gets an average of like 20 feet of snow annually. So a 4-wheeler is pretty much good to go to your mailbox, and that's about it.
To plow your driveway every single day. Well, then they've been getting a healthy dose of lake effect this year too. It really hasn't stopped. It's pretty much been pounding them steadily. So they're gonna have a lot of snow up there this year.
Yeah, their lakes don't ever lose water in the springtime. That is for sure.
Mm-mm. Nope. But like we did have one comment earlier, somebody said it isn't such a bad thing to have all the snow overall because the lakes were getting low for sure, and that is true. I mean, some of the lakes around here were feet low, like 3 or 4 feet low at the end of the fall. So we had a pretty big drought from like August all the way through basically right at freeze up, and then when freeze up happened, then we got dumped on with the snow. But at least it will have some good runoff to help fill the lakes back up, in the spring.
Have you noticing? I noticed that when we were out on New Year's Eve, I fished Long Lake, say.
Yeah.
And I fished it 5 or 6 years, and there's a little sliver of a basin on one part of that lake, on there's 35 long lakes in our area, but I fished the one, and I normally would mark it at 18 feet, 19 feet, and this year I was marking it at 16.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's why I'm afraid with the combination of the low water and the heavy snow on the ice and stuff that I think some of those lakes might have some freeze out this year. Because I mean, you take 4 feet of water out of a lake that's already pushing it on freeze up, ice. It's not going to be pretty for those lakes.
There's a lot of shallow, smaller lakes northwest of you that unfortunately it might happen. I mean, they're all self-sustained. They're not a lot of, you know the area better than I do, but I don't know if many of them have natural springs in them to sustain a healthy oxygen level. So
no, a lot of them don't. A lot of them are just puddles. They're just complete, basically a basin that holds runoff, and that's it. They don't have an inlet. They don't have an outlet. They're just a landlocked, lake, just basin lake. And yeah, they don't have springs. They don't have anywhere for the fish to go to escape that oxygen loss. But somehow, almost all of them don't ever have a complete 100% winter kill. Like they'll have partials, they'll have 95%, but somehow they seem to always come back. I don't know how. Some fish manage to survive in them somehow, usually. So
yeah,
it might be 5, 6, 7, 8 years before they come back, but oftentimes when they do come back, the fish are giant because they haven't had competition from all those young of the year fish, and they grow insanely fast. So it's not always a bad thing, but it sure is sad to see when the lake is full of those big fish that were coming from that last winter kill, and they're all giants, and then they're all dead. But just part of the cycle, part of the way things are up here.
And it's weird how, where you live, you're literally, a mile from the highway. Highway 53 obviously separates you from me.
Yep.
And you go on my side of the highway, and every lake to Hayward is connected by moving water.
Pretty much. Yep. There's at least a creek. At least a creek coming out of them.
Yeah, I mean, you can start at Sand Lake, then you drop down to Big Shatak, and then Big Shatak goes to Red Cedar goes to Rice Lake, Hemlock, and then Rice Lake goes to the Red Cedar River, and it travels 80 miles down to Tainer and Menominee.
Yep.
What's that? Down there, I think? Yeah.
Lake Menominee.
And then Shatek Chain has 4, 5, 6 feeder creeks. We have a dam. And then all the lakes to the east of me are substantially deeper, so they'll never have a winter kill-off. It's just a weird dynamic of how the glacier made everything. It's kind of neat how we're just kind of nerdy that way, but we just notice stuff like that. But you go on one side of the highway, it's totally different than on the other side of the highway, and it's literally a couple miles apart. It's not. And like you go, like I fish in Polk County quite a bit, and Polk County is just like your county. Normal bullshit lakes, good weeds, good structure. Some of them are a little bigger. Most of them are smaller. Polk County, I think, has like 80 or 90 lakes, maybe 100. But then you come on this side of the highway, and there's nothing remotely close that's relatable to anything on the west side of the highway.
Yeah, it's interesting. Although the one place there is in that county forest you're talking about, between Serona and Birchwood and Stone Lake. Out in that area, there's a whole bunch of little pothole lakes that hold the fish. But yeah, other than that,
I don't know, I'm in there. When you look at an aerial photo of that area,
mm-hmm. Yep,
there's got to be there's 100 or more at least.
Yep, and none of those are connected to moving water at all. They're just little potholes, basically.
Yeah, and they're basically just separated by a strip of land and woods. I mean, there's no. Majority of them don't have accesses. You got to walk into them all, which is kind of neat. It's pretty neat in that area.
Oh yeah. I've fished a lot of those lakes, and there's almost never anybody fishing them. And there's usually some stunted fish in them because no one's taking fish out of them. But there's some that have nice fish for sure. You can usually get a lot of action on them for sure. And there's some of those little trout lakes in there too that are stocked back in the woods. You know, so it's definitely cool back in there. But there's a lot of those over my way. Like, I mean, I can think of 5 or 6 of them within 5 miles of my house that are just, 100 acre, 80 acre, 150 acre, 60 acre potholes. That 20-foot basin, 30-foot basin max, and they're pretty much all fish the same. So, but they're susceptible to overharvest because they are just one fishery and it's small. So they're much more susceptible to overharvest than like those lakes you're talking about that are connected, where the fish can move between the lakes and kind of they're bigger water too, and they're just a big system, that's all connected. Whereas these are an ecosystem right there, and that's it. There's no restocking from any other water body. There's no rejuvenation. It is what it is.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's then you think about your side compared to my side. Every lake on my side's 8 miles long.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
LCO. I mean, Grindstone. You got Long Lake. I mean, that one's got to be 8, 9, 10 miles long. Big Chautauqua's got to be 6, 7, 8 miles long. Red Cedar, 5, 6, 7 miles long. I mean, like the Chautauqua chain where I live, from Chautauqua to Cameron is 9 miles.
Yep.
It goes from top to bottom. It goes south of my house, and I live on technically the south part of the city. And all, like, what is that, six lakes that are all, and they're not super wide. None of them, I guess Long Lake is kind of wide on the bottom, but they're all just really long and relatively deep, but they all do have moving water, which helps a lot.
Yeah, most of the lakes I've been fishing this year, I could stand in the middle and kill a deer on any of the shorelines from the center of the lake with a rifle. That's how small they are.
Oh yeah. It's a cool area in there too, because there's enough where you can still fish by yourself pretty regularly.
Yep, exactly. Especially this year. I mean, I just haven't seen hardly anybody out, so that's all right.
Me neither.
I don't mind that part of it. But
no, me. I'm a very big proponent in just practicing catch and release and safely doing this or that and respecting the fishery. And I honestly don't want to deter anybody from fishing, but just eliminating that huge group of fishing people, it's certainly not going to hurt anything. It's going to benefit everybody when spring comes around for sure.
Mm-hmm. When you're going to make it back out on Superior, don't know yet. I would guess it's going to be by the end of the month, either this weekend, not the following because I'm on the Mississippi, but possibly the last weekend in January, I'll head up there again. I'm hoping to kind of put it off till later so there's some new ice to get on is what I'm hoping, because there's just not been any new ice up there for basically since you could get out there. I mean, it's been a very limited area that you can fish. So I'm hopefully going to get up there like towards the end of January and get on some fresh ice is my goal.
Yeah, you gotta tell Tommy Hicks to stop driving around with his Sherpa and breaking it all.
Yeah, exactly. One of my buddies went out with him yesterday, and they did really good. They got a couple really nice browns, a couple nice splake. They had a few whitefish. They had a heck of a day.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I seen some. I saw the post from Tommy, I think.
Yep. The one guy who caught that big brown on the tip up, that was Joe Romportal. He's from Spooner. And then
had a really big one, yeah.
Yeah, really, really nice big silver buck. So yeah, I love catching those things. I mean, they are a blast. The one day I did go up there, I caught one nice one. He was a 26-inch buck, and that made my day. I mean, if I catch one like that, that makes my day every time. They're just so fun to catch. So
they are just the color, like how and I've caught some nice brook trout and I've caught some nice rainbows when I lived in the boundary waters. But when I was with you guys last March, and you just take the fish and you like admire all the colors and the dots of the fish as they just flow across the body all the way to the tail, all the way to the fish hooky. I forget what you call
the type.
Oh yeah, the thing was, and I helped Weldon catch a nice one, and Brett and his friend were there, and you caught some nice one. I don't think I caught a brown that day. I caught splake and whitefish and a couple coho. But just like you just admire the fish because where we live, it's not a thing.
No, right.
It's like catching. I had never caught a coho through the ice before. That was my first time ever, and it was just cool. Like you appreciate. You guys invited me for one. That was super awesome, and then. We saw 5. You caught a huge perch that day.
Yeah, I did.
We saw 5 or 6 species of fish. We never even caught a lake trout, which was kind of a bummer. But you can't do that everywhere. I mean, and the fish were obviously you've had them, and the guys that we're with have eat those fish. You can't beat the flavor of a Lake Superior fish. I don't think it's comparable to anything I've ever eaten.
Yeah, and all of the species are good. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a perch or if it's a whitefish or if it's a coho or a brown trout. Everything out of there is delicious that I've had. There's nothing cleaner than Lake Superior. I mean, it just doesn't get any cleaner than that. So, yeah, it's a great place. Great place, and it's getting overfished, I think. There's a lot of pressure on it. It's been getting tougher to catch fish up there for the last few years, but hopefully this year will help with the limited ice cover, and hopefully the stocking program starts to get a little bit more robust up there too, and rejuvenate some of those populations of browns and splake and make sure they're putting enough in there for everybody. Hopefully they can crank that stocking program up a little bit, but we'll see. There's plenty of food. Yeah. There's no shortage of food. There's billions of smelt in there. So that's not an issue.
No, gosh, no. You see plenty of it on the rocks in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard not to see it out there. I tell you, it's amazing how we use such clunky looking lures. I mean, honestly. I mean, we're fish heads. We like dissect everything, and we're like, well, yeah, that kind of looks like a minnow, or this spoon kind of has a flashy thing to it. But when we drop down our baits for 8 hours on Lake Superior, and we catch fish, and we know that there's literally a million smelt swimming around where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing that we sometimes we do as well as we do.
Yeah, it is.
Like we're tricking those fish. It's like shooting a big buck versus a little one. You got to course that big buck into your zone to get a nice quality shot on it. It's like sometimes how do you catch some of those fish? Like the Hayward Lakes when we're always talking about the competition with perch.
Mm-hmm.
How are we as fishermen as good enough to trick those fish into thinking what we have to offer is better than a fresh smelt. You know what I mean?
Yep, it's true. And I mean, like for a trout, they're not. You will not catch them if your bait's sitting still because they have way too long to look at it and they know it's not food. But it's a reaction strike a lot of times with trout. They see your bait, they move in on it, you start pulling it away, they chase it down, it goes faster, and then they just either have to hit it or it's going to get away. And that's how you catch trout. I mean, you don't finesse a trout into biting your lure. That's just not how it works.
Right.
Yeah, it's a fun game to play, I'll tell you that, especially with Lakers. I mean, that is when you've got 100 feet of water to play with and they're chasing it up and down the whole water column, and then all of a sudden they just decide to smash it after 2 minutes of chasing it. It's pretty crazy. There's nothing more fun than that.
No, I caught 5 or 6 when I lived in Ely, and I think the biggest one was like 5 or 6 pounds. But you know, you're over 80 feet of water and there's a mile of rock underneath your feet, and you just pray for that one red mark to maybe bite. You know.
Yep. Yep, and they got absolutely pounded with snow up there, like way worse than we got it. I mean, they got 30 inches in 24 hours up there. That first snowstorm. I mean, I don't know if anybody's fishing up there, really, from what I've heard. I guess there is some, but they're not bringing machines out there like walking in on dog trails and stuff like that. But
yeah, they're either dog sledding or snowshoeing or both.
Yep.
Yeah, I still have some pretty close friends that live up there, and one of them actually owns a resort. And then, you know, they either go to Vermilion or Red Lake, and Vermilion's pretty much a no-go this year, unless you have a aircraft. I mean, jokingly, but
it's that bad.
That one gets a tremendous amount of snow. Phenomenal. One of probably the top 5 best lakes in Minnesota, but snow and slush. It's dangerous out there. It's big water. Reception's not very good on the lake if something were bad to happen. So, but my buddies from Ely, it's snowshoe or dog sled pretty much this year.
Yep. Well, hopefully the weather turns and we get a little bit better conditions for the second half of the season here, but we'll see. It doesn't look like it's going to be any different for about 2 weeks here. So we're just going to have to deal with it and do what we can.
Yeah, just got to go fishing. And I mean, Caleb will say the same thing I'll say any day of the week. You just make sure when you go, you return to your family. I mean, you just got to be careful this year.
Yep.
I mean, even walking's obviously the safest, but every step you just don't know, honestly. I mean, I'm lucky enough to take the 4-wheeler out on what I thought was pretty safe ice, but I've seen a lot better ice in my lifetime, and I just hope when all these little derbies start happening that people are at least checking into the local hardware store, or I have a couple of bait stores in Chautauqua that you can check in, and you know, Caleb knows all the bait stores in Northwest Wisconsin, but I just hope people are just taking that extra caution, because I just don't want no one driving around. And I know people want to because it's the middle of January and your mindset is, I've been doing this for 20 years, but 2023 ain't the year to start doing it, man.
No, for sure. It is not. I agree. And I mean, I was still spudding out even two weeks ago. Like, not this last weekend, but the weekend before, I was not going to walk out there without spudding ahead. It's that bad. Like, after Christmas, and I'm still worried about going through on foot. Like, that's crazy, but it's true.
My buddy was on the wheeler, and I was in front. I was just walking, you know, I didn't have anything with me, but I was spudding, and I had my little battery-powered auger. I mean, it doesn't hurt to check. It might take you an extra 15 minutes, but I mean, there's no reason not to check. I mean, especially this year.
Yep, exactly.
You just drill a hole, you know, drop your little ruler in there, whatever you got, and just check. I mean, it takes an extra 15 seconds. It's just, I mean, side by side you're going in. Snowmobiles are going in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a snowmobile weighs nothing in the grand scheme of things, and they're sinking.
Yep.
So spudding in January, if you need to do it, just do it. I mean, it's better than taking a swim. I mean, you don't want to do that. I mean, we've had some pretty mild weather, so you could probably get out and be okay, but you just don't want to take the chance.
No, I agree. Yep. And it's not to say don't go fishing, because heck yeah, go fishing, but just don't act like it's a normal year. That's the message I'm sending.
No, I hear you. I'm behind it. I mean, we both fish as much as humanly possible, and you could be a guide if you didn't have your normal job, and I'm a fishing guide. And I mean, people are asking me about the ice on Chautauqua for next weekend, and I'm like, you're walking, or just whatever you do, just use as much precaution as possible. I don't give an ice report because if something were to happen, it could fall back on me.
Yeah.
So,
yep. And you can't give an ice report in these conditions. You can't. It's impossible. There's nothing consistent about the ice right now. Like you can't even imagine how crazy it is, even on one lake from one place from 20 yards. It can be totally different ice conditions within a rock's throw from where you're standing. So
yeah,
you can't even.
I don't want anyone taking my advice and then something happening. I mean, I don't want that extra pressure on me. So I just, like Mille Lacs, I can give a legitimate report because I traveled all that way and I checked the ice, and I feel safe that where we traveled, it was safe ice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But where we are today, it's just nothing is. I mean, ice is not 100% safe all the time, but we can, as fishermen, we can tell when it's solid at least.
Yeah.
And this year, when Caleb and I are walking out, it's not solid at all, really.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. Real Tone's got a question. I think I'll answer your question, and then we'll probably wrap it up here. But he said, we've got our first panfish tourney this weekend. Travel's going to be a pain. Yes, it will. Have you guys been seeing quality crappies in the weeds or more in the basins? I haven't caught a lot of like what I would call tournament winning crappies. I got one or two that were like 13 to 14 and a half, and they were on the shallower side of the schools that I was fishing. So they were in like 10 feet in the weeds. But that's not unusual. Like, very common to see those big schools of crappies schooled by size out in the basin, 10 to 11 inches. And then your bigger fish, a lot of times are going to be shallower, in my experience. What about you? What do you think?
The two crappies that I caught over 13 this year were by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I caught, last Thursday, I caught a handful of nice fish out in the basin, and then I moved up to the first break off the basin, and I caught two over 13, and they both showed up by themselves. They weren't swimming with any other fish. On Tuesday, our biggest crappies came in at about 8 feet, relating to wood, not so much weeds, but wood. And then off the break, which was behind us, and about 14 is where we got the flurry of fish, but our biggest fish came by themselves. They weren't attached to the school at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think part of that is because once they get to that size, they tend to target bait fish more, and they're going to find bait fish more in the weeds than they are in the basin. So when they get to that 13, 14-inch size, they love to eat those little baby bluegills, and they're not eating those out in open water most of the time because they're trying to hide in the weeds. So that tends to be where I've found the really big crappies in the system are going to be shallow oftentimes.
Yeah, they're turned into meat eaters. They're not bug eaters anymore. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's not to say you can't catch big crappies in the basin, because you can. I mean, they'll eat bugs too, but like that Dak said, you probably aren't going to catch them in the middle of that school of 11 inchers, most likely.
Most likely, no.
Yep.
No.
So, good. Cool. Well, lots of good info, lots of interesting stuff going on out there. So, just stay safe, guys, and go catch some fish, and hopefully the weather turns around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, stay safe, everybody. Travel with caution, and Caleb and I will do the same thing. And hopefully, we have another report for you next Thursday. I'm going to get out this weekend a couple of days. I got a guide trip on tomorrow and Sunday, so I'll just take my time when we get out there, and hopefully, we catch a few fish and make a good day of it. Enjoy the weather, whether you're on the ice or not, but just be careful when you're out there.
Yep. All right. See you guys. Good luck, Dax. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll catch you later.
Yep. Guys, take care, everybody. Thanks.